I'm shopping at the soup store. Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I am Morrow, your storyteller for today. Here with me have some more RPG horror stories. I've been making a lot of progress with my Final Fantasy D&D campaign. I've yet to make any videos on it, and I really want to put out the actual, recordings of us playing together once I edit them. But basically, I've started making a bunch of maps, and you know what? I'm kind of proud of these specific maps. Here's some of the world maps. If you ever play Final Fantasy 14, you probably recognize these places. I decided to give them a little bit of extra texture, make sure everything is nicely labeled and stuff, and I've been having a good time making these sort of maps, and I can't wait to have my players be able to see them proper. The players are finally getting themselves out of the Thanalan territory of the deserts of the south, and are going to be heading out to the Black Shroud, the forestry area, the really pretty forest with fake creatures and stuff. But nevertheless, let's get some RPG horror stories for today. The party ruined our plan while I was on a bathroom break. So most of this campaign so far revolved around a city-state. We've been planning to take it over for past 6 or so sessions. We're at 12 sessions so far. We had a meeting scheduled with the leader of the city-state, the Khan. Our plan was simple. We attacked him during the meeting. At the start of the session, we had about 30 minutes of random roleplay, breakfast, and off-topic talking. After that, we went to the palace of the Khan. There we told that we need to wait 1 hour before we can speak with the Khan. The meeting wasn't delayed, we were there early. Then I had to use the bathroom. I was expecting them to have roleplay during the waiting and talk about off-topic stuff. This happened a lot. Here we just skip the meeting, attack the Khan, roll initiative, etc. That's not what happened. I was gone for long, to be clear. When I got back, I was informed that the rest of the party decided to not follow the plan. They started to raid/pillage the building we were in. This alerted the Khan, and now he's gone. This accomplished nothing. It only made things worse. Because I wasn't there, my character got default dragged along. If I was there, I would have stopped this from happening. This was a really stupid move. I agree, and I think there's actually multiple parts about it. First of all, the rest of the party should be much more considerate of the player, especially if they're going to enact something that's going to be so game-changing or so story-changing, like starting to pillage already without waiting for the one player to come back, but also a little bit on DM as well, because if something is going to be changing things in this kind of drastic matter, I feel like it should be DM's responsibility to say, okay guys, because you guys want to do that, before we start anything, I want to wait for the player that is AFK in the bathroom to come back and be able to be in on it to make sure that they know what's going on and know what's up. If it was something minor, like just, role playing or maybe going over to like another part of the building just for a bit, just for a little bit of roleplay shenanigans and stuff that isn't going to be affecting the story, that would be one thing. I'll have the player tag along, or having the character quote unquote tagging along with the rest of the party. I've done it before where players are basically just like exploring a dungeon and they're just moving on to the next hallway, but they know the hallway is safe. They just want to go back and investigate something that they've seen before, like be able to read some extra text, be able to investigate a door before they fully open it, because that'd be the most respectful thing to do, is to wait for the big moments for when the player actually joins in, because it sounds like the player would just be completely out of the loop and stuff, and they come back and suddenly everything gone to hell in a handbasket, and just like, what is going on here? So honestly, shame on the players and shame on the DM for not waiting for the one player that wanted to join in, because literally everything went tits up only because one player went out to the bathroom and nobody else waited for them. That is a bad manners kind of thing to do, and I hope players avoid that sort of thing. Nevertheless, let's get to the next story for today. DM railroaded my sole purpose in the campaign to die very early in the story. For context, this is my first D&D group in about a year and a half. I'm not too versed in Forgotten Realms lore, so forgive me if some things are misnamed or misremembered. The campaign was started around 2-3 months ago. DM himself admitted using AI for only item stats. BS, he'd been typing away to ChatGPT anytime any of us asked about the setting for the first 3 sessions. That's a sin right there. And it's taking place in Forgotten Realms, Faerun, and currently Waterdeep, past the canon timeline. My PC is a tiefling warlock who's on a mission to search for his wife who was kidnapped, and he has been searching for her for a few months. He heard rumors about someone who knew her living in Waterdeep. He had met 3 other PCs and wanted to help them on their quest: a Dragonborn Druid, Human Paladin, and Wood Elf Ranger. Our characters have been exploring Waterdeep in search of occultists who were stealing artifacts tied to some old or dead gods, and a BBG who was draining the artifacts to make her gods stronger, who had killed many and chased off others. We had an NPC join our party who had a noble sacrifice, so we went to bury him in a grove since we figured he was a proper thing to do. Once I finished carving his headstone, the BBG appears from the shadows, slowly clapping with a bunch of mages also clapping from the shadows. At this point in the story, we have been offered many deals from BBG, who wanted our help finding artifact in return for my wife's safety, and also some devil guy who just wanted information. Our party had denied every deal given to us. While my character always tried to find the benefits of making the deal with those characters, our party always talked my PC out of it. So when the BBG gave me my wife's severed hand, I was ready to make a deal. BBG teleported my wife in front of her, putting her hands on her head. It was ready to snap her neck. At this point, the party tried our best to stop the BBG, and as was a recurring problem with its DM, you tried and didn't even roll for damage, as what you did seemed to have no effect on her. Cool. Love it. My party was offered a deal one last time. We denied it. I say we, but I tried to reason with the group. Going nowhere. Try to attack BBG one last time. She's not only snapped my wife's neck, but pulled her spinal cord completely from her body. Okay, BBG disappears almost instantly. It's okay. I have a custom item. Scroll or Revivify. We've been saving this for an important death. Seemed like a good use.
Actually, you try using it, and it seems like your wife's was killed by outside of anything magic could heal.
Wow, that's new. Never heard that one before. Maybe it could have told us that before giving us the revive anybody scroll during session 1. Long story short, feels like no matter what, my wife was going to die, and I'm pissed because it feels like no agency in this campaign. My character's sole purpose and goal is now null and void. So yeah, don't really feel like playing anymore because everyone at the table downplayed it. Can't even express how angry I am because they would just tell me I'm overreacting. Feels like a targeted way to get me to leave the party. Regardless of that, dude, that just kind of sucks, man. Honestly, do yourself a favor, leave this table, leave this game. You literally wasted so much time just to play in this game. I don't know how long you've been playing this for, but you wasted so much time, and constantly, every single time you try to do anything, the party doesn't want to parlay or relent in any particular way. They just want to do what they want to do instead of what your character wants to do, which I think is just an unfair thing to do. I get that I want to trust the BBG. I fully get it. But like, if at the end of the day, the only way for like a PC's important NPC character to survive is to actually go with some sort of a deal, you would think the party would be like, well, I don't want to agree to the BBG, but our warlock friend here has the wife in the BBG's clutches, so maybe we should try to parlay in some way. No, the players want to do whatever they want to do. And understand if, let's say, for example, they keep into the characters, they don't want to trust the BBG because clearly BBG is a BBG. You don't trust everything the BBG is going to say. However, in this situation, I feel like the players should have relented a little bit and be like, okay, we don't trust you, but we'll do this just to save this other player's character's wife. But also the fact that no matter what the other players do, you tried and don't even roll for damage. Gee, thanks for giving me an unwinnable situation cutscene, DM. That sucks. I hate when DMs do that. I hate when DMs do that. I had a DM that had done that to me, and I genuinely hated it. At first, I was like, oh, they're probably just immune to the specific damage type that I'm doing. No matter what, the BBG was never going to take any damage in the first place, or if they would take even a single iota damage for one reason or another, they would instantly teleport as a reaction, or a special action, or legendary action, or whatever the hell, because that DM specifically wanted to do whatever the hell they want to do, regardless of any sort of like rules and stipulations or anything, which is really, really annoying. When DMs pulls mechanics out of the RAS just because it's convenient for them, it feels so unsatisfying as a player, because no matter what you do, you're going to be a losing situation, and the wife's neck is going to snap, and they're going to have their spine pulled out. And of course, the scroll to revive anyone from brink of death is literally not working because this was done outside of the scrolls and magical means or something, because of course they do. But of course, the DM can't let the player have anything at all in the slightest in this situation whatsoever at all, because we can't have fun here unless we are the DM or we're part of the party that doesn't want to deal with a BBG. I don't know, this feels like a very like DM versus players kind of mentality, and it's really toxic and it really sucks. I'm sorry you wasted so much time playing with this game or playing with these people. I hope you find yourself a better game. No D&D is better than bad D&D, and this is 100% bad D&D. Let's get to the next story for today. How would you handle a metagaming rules lawyer player? I'm running the Evil of Ruin campaign with a group of players. One of them, I'll call him Bob, is a very knowledgeable player, has most of the rules for the game memorized. Warning, potential spoilers below. The party made it to Barovia and Strahd and had made his appearance in a death house. I wanted the scene to be epic and scary, as Strahd had been toying with this character as they tried to make their way out of Death House. Started describing the scene. Strahd manifesting from the floorboards, wailing screams, atmosphere, etc. To get my point across, I was very much trying to create a cinematic moment for the players. I mean, after all, Strahd is a scary guy and a huge icon of D&D history. About 5 seconds into my description, Bob interrupts me with and says, I cast Fireball as soon as I see him. I respond by saying that will let me finish setting the scene, and then you can tell me how you'd like to respond. He says something along the lines of, well, I'm casting the fireball. Rolls damage die. He needs to make a dex save. I tell him, great, you can do that on your turn once we reach combat. So I ignore his complaints until the scene is over and we officially start initiative. This kind of interaction became pretty regular to the point where Bob would just start doing his own thing in the middle of other play interactions or dialogue. I have kind of players that are similar to that, not as bad as Bob, to the point where it's like, I don't care what the DM wants to do. I cast fireball anyway. I didn't ask to hear the monologue. I cast fireball anyway, DM. Rolls dice immediately. As a DM, I fully understand now about like the fun that the DM can have when they're setting the scene and make it something cinematic and make it something cool. So I, as a player, would never want to go out of my way to ruin that fun for other DMs. And I have players that particularly are very quick to jump on the opportunity because as far as they can see, there's already a cutscene happening. Well, my play agency matters more. So I'm going to go ahead and just do this attack because the DM hadn't rolled an initiative yet. So I'm going to go ahead and do it quickly before anything can happen. Before the BBG can finish the monologue, or before the reveal of the monster happens, or during the reveal of the monster happening. And I gotta say it, for any players that do this sort of thing as well, let your DM have fun too. There's nothing wrong with your DM wanting to present some sort of a cinematic reveal to the creature that you gotta be rolling for initiative anyway, right? This is just a little bit of like foreplay, if I want to use in this situation. This is DM's foreplay before we get to the climax that is gonna be the combat of fighting against this creature in particular, right? When I describe that the sands under you shift and whirl violently as a creature emerges itself from the sands above, this large worm-like creature with tiny little mandibles and legs, a large circular mouth with multiple rows of teeth as the sandworm appears out into here. It's not an opportunity for the players to be like, oh, the DM is describing stuff right then and there. I better do my quick attack and stuff. It's just the DM describing flavor text because they want to create a fun little situation for the players before we start rolling into initiative. A DM could always say like, suddenly dragon appears, everybody roll initiative, but that sounds boring to me. That sounds like a lot of like, not a lot of preamble that is added to it, and it doesn't make me as a player, it wouldn't make me as a player feel excited, nor does the DM feel excited. The fun of the DM is to be able to tell a story and have cool reveals and cool things happen before the players get to engage in fun combat and defeat the great BBG, monster, to solve traps or figure stuff out. When the DM goes into a flavor text territory, this is the DM having fun. And if you go out of the way to ruin that, that kind of makes you the jackass for that. Don't ruin the fun for your DM. Let them have fun too. There are players too. If a DM wants to spend a few seconds, give a little bit of monologue or flavor text about how BBG creature is being, revealed or how it enters into the room and stuff, let the DM do that because that's them engaging into the story and them having fun. I'm not saying that you should excuse if a DM is railroading, yeah. This is clearly not a railroad. This is just DM introducing a creature like Strahd into the house and stuff before you guys roll initiative. They're trying to give you some sort of flavor. They're trying to make the fight feel epic, cinematic, trying to make it feel cool. They're not locking you into a cutscene for the sake of locking you into a cutscene. They just want to give a little bit of extra preamble before you guys roll for the initiative. If you skip all that flavor, then all you're going to be getting is creature appears, roll initiative, and that'll be hella boring. Let the DMs have fun too. Your DMs are players as well. They deserve to have fun introducing cool creatures before you guys roll for initiative and stuff. Anyway, let's continue. Other examples are with puzzles. Anytime a spell wouldn't work, knock immune magic doors, for example, he would just complain or read me the description of what he interpreted the rules saying about it. If for some reason it didn't work for him, his character would run back to the start of the dungeon. Or very recently, I jump into the acid pit trap and out alive. Shortly after that session, he backed out of the game completely. Okay, that I kind of feel like I want to have a comment on. Not the part to jump into acid pit and just have this character just basically die, but knock immune magic doors? Okay, hold on one second. I feel like maybe there might be some sort of a balance. Maybe there's indeed a problem going on here because a knock immune magic door. Okay, so if it's a magic door in the first place, let your player use knock on it. If a player grabbed knock in order to be able to unlock magical and non-magical doors, they're grabbing the spell specifically for that reason because they could grab any other spell and they're spending a second level spell slot in order to use knock. Let your players use the knock spell. I don't see how that's a problem. I don't see how that's an issue. And why you even have to, why even have knock immune magical doors, for example, when you could just at session 0 just say, hey,
one of the spells I'm banning is the knock spell, because I want to have magical doors that can't be dispelled unless you use the spell magic on them, I guess, using a 3rd level spell slot, because that'd be so much easier than being like, hey, what'd you grab, player? You grabbed the knock spell. You prepared the knock spell for today? Well, sorry, player. There are a bunch of knock immune spell doors out there. I understand if you want to make like a really complicated puzzle or really complicated room for players to go through and stuff, but like, I feel like this is just a lot. I feel like this is a little bit of a problem here. A player interjecting during a cutscene or during the introduction is providing flavor text is indeed a problem, but also I dare say there might be some valid concerns and criticisms regarding the usage, I guess the lack of usage of various different spells, like knock not be able to unlock a magical door when clearly it should be able to unlock a magical door, especially if they have like an arcane lock cast on it. One of the flavor texts for knock is to be able to specifically deal with magical doors alone. If you just railroading the party with magical doors that are knock immune, then why even have them be there? Just make it an impassable wall of void or something. I don't know. Just ban the knock spell. If you really want to railroad players this hard with magical doors and stuff, the overreaction of like run to the start of the dungeon or jumping in the acid pit just to unlive your character and stuff is a bit of a reaction, 100%, definitely. But I think it's because it comes maybe from the frustration the player has with not able to use like knock spell. They grab the knock spell for their character, and now that knock spell is useless. That kind of sucks, man. That would make me feel a little bit like, well, I'm kind of useless, guys. I want to bring a useful spell, but he's useless. Sorry. Another time, I had a cinematic event set to trigger after a specific player was downed by a boss, backstory purposes. And when it happened, my plan was for Vecna to appear, kidnap the player body, and leave with the other boss. That was because the other player was phasing out a character and bringing in a new one, and we all had discussed it prior. Bob wanted to try something at the end of the cutscene right before Vecna left to interrupt their escape and save the phased out character from being taken. He got really upset when he couldn't interrupt the description and cast counterspell. I told him that, per prior conversations, this was how the other player was getting phased out, and I created this as a way for you guys to potentially find him later and save him. He said the counterspell is interrupt, and he could technically cast it right before. At this point, I was so frustrated, I kinda glazed over his request and finished the cutscene. He got so mad he stopped talking the rest of the session and refused to respond. We played via Discord. I felt bad that he got frustrated by my rulings, but it's hard to give a player the benefit of the doubt when they constantly interrupt you or try to undermine your previous rulings by trying to find the loopholes in the rules. Also, I mean, you don't have to find about loopholes in the rules. There's no loopholes in the rules. Counterspell would be able to technically, I guess, if the casting dimension door or teleport, be able to like stop that spell from happening, I guess, in that regard. However, if you already describe to the player saying, hey man, this is like a setup for this player to get this character moved out and another character moves in, you know, just a way to basically them drop another character to play as a different character because they just bored of the first character. Maybe that character's story is kind of over, so they want to try a different character. In that point, in that regard, this is done specifically so that another player can start playing a different player character instead of their current player character, creating this character that they made as part of a story for later on. There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually a very tactful way to do so, you know? When a player is willingly okay with having the character be retired and become basically as a prop for DM to use for story reasons, I think it's okay because everybody is at the table, knows what's going on. They know this is going to be happening anyway. They know the character is going to be retiring anyway. So for Bob to interject and saying, but I technically could counterspell. Yeah, you technically could, but then they'll kind of give the whole, you kind of ruin the whole purpose of this other player retiring this character in the first place. Why would you want to spend extra spell slots in order to try to counterspell this specific spell when the whole purpose of this moment is for the player character to be retired so the player can play as the new player character? It just doesn't seem to make sense to me in the slightest. It just sounds like Bob wants to do things for the sake of just doing things. Yeah, you technically could counterspell, but then you'd be a jackass because you're trying to prolong some sort of a moment where it doesn't need to be prolonged because the player just wants to retire the old character, Bob. Save your spell slots, stop being a jerk, and just let this happen. If we go by technically, yes, Bob, you technically could cast counterspell, but also I'm pretty sure Vector could cast Power Word Death and kill your wizard character or sorcerer or whatever the hell you're playing. But if you're going on technically, we could just roll an issue right there and have every player character die right then and there. Technically. I understand Bob's frustration. If his spells just don't work in this game, in this campaign. And clearly that's something DM could definitely work on for the future to allow more abilities for spells to work, like knock, for example. It seems a little bit absurd that knock, like does a player grab the knock spell specifically to be able to deal with magical doors and be able to help the party, but they can't do so. But alternatively, technically counterspelling in this moment when a player wants to retire the player character just to play as a different player character is also really stupid. Has anyone else had this happen before? I was trying to hear my players out of their disagreements, and him and I had many talks one-on-one about this decision. I explained that sometimes I'm going to describe a scene and set the ambience and style to make the game interesting. And your character can't always have the drop on the bad guy before I give a description of what you're seeing. Unfortunately, every time he would say he understood that he was just having a bad day, he'll proceed to do it again and again. I love your thoughts on this. How to be better prepared to try to work through this kind of thing for the future. Maybe this Bob player has some sort of like a player versus DM mentality where they think the DM is trying to screw them over, but alternatively I can kind of see why the DM would try to screw them over and why they would see it in this particular regard. Because you DM yourself, you OP, are not completely blameless from this. Knock immune magical doors is diabolical and you should get rid of that. If a player has a knock, that means they have knock. Let them use the knock spell. It's a second level spell slot that they have a limited amount of, and they have to start using up, higher levels from then on in order to use knock further. Let them use the knock spell. Allow them to use the knock spell. Don't ever do knock immune doors. If you want to do things like use a hollow on the door, you could, and you could have some high level spells out there that affect doors uniquely that can be affected by knock in any particular regard. You could totally do that 100%, but make it like reasonable, make it playable. Design situations where your player can actually use the knock spell if that's what they're preparing for, for the session, and that's what they have prepared just in general. If that's just something they're rocking just to be able to use that on, let's say for example, arcane chests or arcane doors or arcane barriers of any kind, allows them to pass through some sort of an ingress. Let them do that. It's the same thing, for example, right? I remember my very first time I had the invocation of the devil side for my warlock. I grabbed that because not only did I like the fact that I could see within 120 feet of dark vision, but also I could see through magical and non-magical darkness. We ended up in a mansion that was surrounded by magical darkness. We couldn't see beyond within 10 feet of him. And while that sounds cool and all, when I said, hey DM, I have this invocation lets me see through non-magical darkness, they told me, yeah, technically you do, but not in this place. It's a different magical darkness, which is the stupidest thing in hindsight now that I think about it. I went with it at the time because it's like, oh, okay, maybe I just don't understand the rules and stuff. But now that I'm more aware, that is the stupidest and dumbest ruling possible. Like, if a player has that, regardless of whatever you're going for, DM, you should allow for the player to be able to actually be able to see things as need be, as proper. If they have the feature that lets them do the thing, let them do the thing, because otherwise we're creating a bunch of other parameters that are completely unnecessary. Now we have stages of magical darkness. Oh, this magical darkness is not magical, it's super magical, or it's magical from like it's hell magic or something that doesn't affect the devil side pact or something. I don't know, man. It just creates a lot of parameters. It creates a lot of bullshit that is completely unnecessary. If a player has something that can interact in the world that is like normal, right? It's not just him interjecting onto a cutscene just to be a dick or something. Let them interact in the world. No wonder Bob probably has some frustrations in the game, and there's some things that OP could definitely work on. But also, yes, Bob is indeed a jerk for just in the middle of a cutscene, in the middle of an introduction, in the middle of flavor text, just jumping in. I cast Fireball. I don't care about what the DM wants. I roll dexterity save, DM. I cast Fireball, so my agency is more important than whatever you are trying to give us. Bob is definitely a problem player and should definitely have this issue addressed 100%. But also OP, let Bob use the knock spell. Just let them use the knock spell. Don't make knock immune doors, or hey, just ban a couple of spells like knock if you really don't want your players to be able to use them, so Bob doesn't have to worry about grabbing it and have it be useless. Imagine if you grab the daylight spell because you know you're going to be traveling through like magical darkness or some place that's going to be really dark, like the Underdark, and suddenly you find super darkness where the daylight spell just doesn't break through it or something. That'd be beyond stupid. And with that, that's going to be all our stories for today.
I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.